Hello everyone, I am Duke and welcome to the FeelNoPaint Podcast, and today we are joined by none other than Tuomas Pirinen, who is going to help me pick through some of community questions I've seen over the last couple of days and weeks. And the big question we're looking at today is the Covenant of Hell and what that means for Trench Crusade. So, Tuomas, do you want to start by sort of giving us a brief overview of what the Covenant is, how it affects both sides? And because to me, it seems like this divine binding contract that if it's breached by either side, there is something equal has to happen. Or if it's breached in a serious way, the entire setting could end. So do you want to sort of intro us to it and sort of explain from your side of things what it is?
Yeah, well, it is exactly like you said. It's basically the divine powers answer any supernatural help that the hell sends to aid their mortal followers with equal measure. Because the crux of the setting is that us mortal humans, we have a free will. We get to choose. So from the point of view of divine power is that the mortals are using their own free will is to oppose other mortals. Basically, my children are squabbling amongst themselves, but since I've granted them free will, if I go and sort of resolve it for them, well, the free will can't exist, or that is how the people within the Trench Crusade universe would see it. So basically, entering a full-on fallen angels into the Great War the response would be by the heavenly host. It's the coming to the aid of the faithful, and the earth couldn't take that. We've had the one story written in the past is basically a single angel is so destructive that even for the other faithful, it is as fatal as a nuclear bomb going off. And it's also important to understand that from the point of view of the infernal powers, just killing the mortals while they enjoy it isn't the main goal. It's the corruption of creation. So their goals for the corruption of the earth isn't necessarily that they only want to kill everybody. They'd like to do that too, but quite often human suffering is the converting the mortals to their cause. Like they are very important to them is the ability to attract the humans to join the heretic legions and the travel to heretic domains, or be converted by the missionaries of the Black Grail to increase their spiritual power. Now, how much is this a sort of something that because there isn't obviously, as far as the people in the Trench Crusade universe are concerned, they don't believe there is any higher arbiter than God. So is this simply how the universe has been set by God, or is there some other deeper reason why this sort of a balance is maintained? But my thinking from crafting the rules and the lore is that this allows both sides, their human followers, to exhibit free will. But of course, hell being hell, they are looking at the being the devil is in the details. They are looking at the ways to circumvent that. So the court of the seven-headed serpent is sort of made out of corrupted and is the creatures like the yoke fiends and the praetors. Or the sorcerers that are made from the shards of dead fallen angels, rather than being an actual fallen angels. So they're sort of skirting and the following the letter, but not the spirit of the law. But then we also see on the faithful side, we see the synod of the strategic prophecy. We see the war prophets. Is certainly the people of both the Sultanate and the pilgrims and the New Antioch and the faithful nations believe that they are also aided by the heavenly powers. Now, the setting on purpose keeps this very vague. It's because first of all, I don't like blunt storytelling where I just explain everything, and it also leaves not enough room for people's imaginations to breathe. And since we have people from all over the world playing the game and from different faiths, backgrounds, And if we came out and said, look, in the Trench Crusade universe, Mormonism is 100% true, well, it kind of defeats the purpose of all the other work we did. So instead, we present the world where anybody can build a warband and take part in the game on their own terms, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think it is that exorcism of free will and how the players are given full free reign over how they want to interpret some of those aspects of the story. Because one of my interpretations of the space program, for example, is that the Synod and the Church are just trying to get to the third heaven. And the third heaven is beyond the celestial heaven, which is the sort of outer space. And they're trying to get there to commune with God more closely. But yeah, going back to the Covenant of Hell for a sec, I think about a week and a half ago, I reached out to you to ask about this because I'd seen some stuff on Reddit about people asking about, the how divine or how much of a demonic essence do the demons have, and do some of the return mark penitence and stuff like that have. So I was asking about this sort of spectrum of mortality in Trench Crusade. It seems to me, from my interpretation of the lore, that everyone's got a puncher's chance of killing anything in the setting. Even the mightiest archdevil could, in theory, be killed by a wretch with a lucky shot. But there's this scale of, from God, so for example, God being at one end, or the devil of the setting being at one end, and being almost 100% divine with almost no mortality. You've then at the other end where they're almost 100% mortal with the tiny infinity. Else sort of sits on a spectrum in between that. So is there a point at which, say something like a praetor, the praetors are born from demonic lineages of the angels. Is there a point at which a praetor becomes too divine or too demonic that it would breach the covenant and can't come through? Or
it's mentioned in the lore that if they do great enough services, they would be elevated into a full demonhood, because, like you say, they come from a more noble demonic lineage, and and therefore they have potential for something greater. So that gives them motivation being commanders. But since they are sort of amalgam between a mortal beast of field and a demon, they have ace can be killed, like their existence can be ended. So they sort of are more, their lineage gives them potential for sort of this dark ascension, but they are still coming to Earth. They are in mortal peril. Is this instead they can be physically slain and they're the sort of dissipated. So there is an interesting thing there, what you said, that you're absolutely right that the humans are neither angelic or demonic in nature. But the interesting thing, of course, is that if you follow traditional theology, human was created in image of God. So there is there is you have the free will. You have that the only thing that within the at least Christian theology that is the crown of creation. On the other hand, and in Islam, where the rebellion of the Iblis, their version of the fallen angel, came from, was that he will not bow before Adam. He would not bend knee to a mere human. So in some ways, it's quite interesting that while a individual human compared to a mighty fallen angel or a demon is quite weak, they are still, because of the free will and because of their special place in creation, in most theologies they are set in some ways above supernatural creatures. And again, it is for their adoration and the worship that the demons yearn for. Like we've covered with the latest lore with Beelzebub, was very much about him trying to secure mortal followers that would never again betray him, like they did in the book of Samuel, where they returned the Ark of the Covenant to the chosen people.
So, yes, touch on that for a second, where you were saying about humanity in effect is set above the demons and angels in some respects, because of free will. I mean, there's an element of free will, I believe, in some religions, an element of free will to is it the higher order of angels, but the lesser-ition don't have free will. That's how the split between demons and angels actually happened, because there was an element of free will there. So yeah, and I guess the more divine a thing becomes, almost the more free will it loses, in a sense, in Trench Crusade.
Yeah. In Trench Crusade, it's by the way, there's been a multiple viewpoints on free will and the free will of the angels and angelic spirits. And there's never been a consensus. There's a huge amount of the theological text debating this, which is quite interesting. But of course, in a game setting, we sort of had to give ourselves something to work with. So I definitely think that we had to go with the free will simply because it's a game. I mean, if everything is preordained, there isn't much point playing it now, is there? Yeah. It's that's why it's quite interesting. Important aspect of the Trench Crusade. Whatever you have less or more free will, as depending on your proximity to either the divine or demonic. My feeling is that at least you have more intellect. So whether it's your choices are truly free, or you simply have more mental tools at your disposal, I think that is probably always going to be quite vague. It's because the focus really is on a battle for the mortal realm and the mortal creatures is within the Trench Crusade realm. I think that the keeping a reasonably high level of ambiguity about the absolute rules is good, because it spurs people's own imagination and creativity. And there is a slippery slope that if you try to write the absolute rules of the universe detail by detail, sooner or later you're going to trip yourself up, or you will run into an issue that you're starting to encroach into an area where then people will feel that the game is less welcoming because you are putting up obstacles to what is inherent to their core beliefs or their culture. And I don't think nobody gains anything by that. A lot of games has fallen into a trap that they try to regulate the tiniest little thing. There is the famous game, the Campaign for North Africa, which takes 1,500 hours to play it full. Every hour takes tens of hours to complete, and you have these complex tables for water evaporation. And they've judged and regulated everything, but the cost of that is that the game is unplayable.
Yeah, it sounds pretty unplayable. I've not really interacted with that game very much. I've heard bits of it that
it's legendary how horrifying it is.
So going back to that as well, right? The free will you're giving yourselves, even the timeline says it's biased, it's likely inaccurate, and there's this ambiguity over, well, actually, did this happen in this time, because it's 300-400 years before the current day in the setting, and we're only told that it happened this way by this one writer who is in verse. But there's likely another timeline written by someone else who puts things, either dates slightly differently or entire events slightly differently, or there's a slight different slant to it. I think one of the big things for me that shows that ambiguity as well is the map, because I have a theory that the map was commissioned by the church. It's from England. I think Jared said it was penned by someone in England. So it's basically a propaganda piece in my eyes, that it doesn't show you all the territories and all the war fronts and all the things that hell has actually done in 800 years, because why would you show that to your populace that you want to keep happy and keeping up the fight? You want morale to be up, so you're only going to tell them what's publicly available.
Yeah.
It seems to me.
I mean, Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. First of all, it doesn't take into account the heretic have a naval supremacy. Sorry, superiority, not supremacy. So the faithful fleets can offer battle, but the heretic fleet is more powerful. So all the coastal areas could be marked as battle zones because the naval raiders can strike anywhere. Uh, the Black Rail, like during the Corps Wars, most of the Europe would have been covered by it. And the areas that are shown to be owned by Help is the are ones that are pretty much considered that everybody you can't paper it over. They know that the everybody in the faithful nations knows it's those things are gone. Ultima Thule that's shown in the on the map is actually everybody believes that it has already fallen to heretics because there is because the dominance of the Sea of Heretics, it's still shown as free, but the most people don't believe that. Then a huge amounts of the land that the people know is taken by heretics is to the east, to the south, is not shown because the map is cut just. It actually cuts a very huge chunk of the central heretic powers. It's the control of the map is not shown. And then you also have to remember that the right next to the hellish domains is the massive no man's land that neither side rules. So you would see it, for example, that while the heretics have the old eastern provinces of the Byzantine Empire, or there would be a tens and tens and tens of miles of contested no man's land on the other side of the Golden Horn into the European side of the what's the strait that the Straits of Hormuz, I believe it's these. Sorry, what straits that runs through Constantinople? Is that Istanbul nowadays? Anyway, everybody knows what I'm talking about. So it is just that the Order of Dragon is contesting it. So yeah, the situation, if it was a absolutely made by somebody who was unbiased, would probably look a lot grimmer. And this is only one map maker. It doesn't show the hidden cultists, the enclaves of the heretics, the traitors, the secret collaborators. There is like a rot that's spreading across the faithful nations as well, which is reflected by some of the rules, like the corrupt merchant rules, that there are many who are working for the heretics in a clandestine manner. And we found in the history that very often the heretics strike at the very heartlands of the faithful nations, is the seemingly like without the faithful being able to stop them. So that speaks to that things are not that easy. Then you have all the trade routes and the supply lines are being raided by the heretic navy, which causes huge suffering. Because as you know, it's the transporting food supplies through water is 100 times more effective than by land. So you always looking at the planet and only looking at the land mass is always a bit disingenuous, because all the greatest empires have been naval empires as well. Some of them purely naval empires. And what you said about the biased a narrator is very important. I mean, if you look at our history is shockingly biased, is how this has been written. And it's quite funny because one of the justifications that the Bible is true that was presented is in the early church was that since none of the apostles, when they describe the gospel, they don't agree with each other, but they said that's true, because have you ever heard if there are two people telling the same story that they tell it the same way and they agree on the details? They always, the surest sign that it's a hoax is that if they agree with each other, because it means that they agree what they're gonna say.
Yeah, I think as well that, you know, going back to that point of the rock going through Europe, and but the portrayal of things in the timeline, you can even see that the the faithful heartlands aren't that safe because of Avignon. How was Beelzebub's forces able to take Avignon seemingly quite easily because of betrayal inside from the cardinal that is, I believe, now the anti-pope of Avignon. that shouldn't have been able to happen because they had the Black Grail cordoned off, and we know in the lore it's because they're a different strain of the Black Grail, so they weren't weakened by your senior Rex being killed. But they still got people into the Heartlands to infiltrate and usurp an entire city, which shouldn't really have happened. I just want to go back a minute to an idea I had about that mortality and divinity sort of spectrum we were talking about. The Hell Knight lore. Hell Knights seem to be one of the only things in the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent that doesn't necessarily have to have started as a demon. Because the Oak Fiends are like what could potentially be an appraisal that was born weak and was given over to infirm biologists to experiment on, and that's a different bloodline now as started to be that slave class in Hell's Forces. The Pit Locusts and the Sorcerers, they are lesser Ishim or shattered lesser Ishim. The Hell Knights, though, it seems to me that if you're a powerful enough heretic and you gain Fable of the Core, you can have an ascension of a sort, like the Praise Lord later can, to become Hell Knight, because it mentions either Hell Knights are either Praise Lords that have failed and are being crushed into service as a Hell Knight, or they're ascended more. And I was wondering if, say for example, a heretic general devoted to gets a lot of accolades, awful, could he then be ascended into a Hell Knight, then be further ascended into a Praise Lord, to then potentially be ascended to a full demon? Is that something that, because, what is it now? It's the pincers of, is it the pincers of Lilith or something like that rip away the marble spark from the Berrythorn? Can that just be done multiple times to ascend a mortal into a demon or a semi-demon, to ascend them further and further until they eventually join the court somehow? Could that be something that, in theory, can happen?
Yeah, it's one of the ideas, because of course we are dealing here with a very incomplete records, and the interrogation of demonic prisoners is but even when a paladin using a blood of lamb is interrogating them, you still can't be certain because demons are liars. So information we have on the Hell Knights, and probably very much on purpose, is uncertain. So the working theory is that that's indeed possible. I always like the path of the dark apotheosis. Basically, a human, just like the if you follow the path of light, it's your reward for the atoning for your sins is that you ascend to heaven. But I've always were fascinated by the idea that the same could happen the other way around, that the sufficiently evil human, it's could eventually, their spirit could become powerful enough to become demonic. There is no 100% proof of the exact origin of the Hell Knights, and again, it's based on the information that the people in the Trench Crusade universe would have been able to acquire. So I gave you an example that the paladins are so powerful that they actually interrogate creatures from hell. You do dissect the bodies. It's the reports from the battlefields. It's the spies in the heretic regions would report back. So the potential background of the Hell Knights is constructed from these pieces. It's learned by agents of the church. So there is a degree of uncertainty, but I think both paths are possible in the lore, and I find both of them fascinating. And I also find that I find the fate of the humans in the heretic lands and in the hell's domains interesting. Like when you're wretched and you choose to fight and you kill some saintly priest and gain your freedom. What happens next? To me, that's quite an interesting question. Because of course, if a mercy is unlimited, you still have time to atone, possibly. But of course, you'd be treated by New Antioch a horrific murderer and a traitor. So what do you do? That's, to me, that's interesting. What would happen to such a person? This could be a possible path to Hell Knight that you choose in order to ascend. You choose to do with your free will something truly unspeakably evil. Maybe you're forced by the circumstances. I see your choice.
Yeah. I think that point about the wretched is interesting as well, because for me, I've thought about this a couple of times, and instead of, for example, like say, a wretched goes and kills an alchemist or kills a cleric, they're sufficiently faithful enough for it to be granted its freedom by hell. Hell seems to me, at least, to be very much more, bit more sort of lawful evil. Like they have a rule set. They are evil, but they'll follow that rule set. So there's a bit more honor in the camp in that you fulfill the great deeds, now you get your freedom. But then, like you say, that person still probably looks a bit corrupted. So if they send the balls in New Antioch, they'd probably be interrogated as a heretic, treated as a heretic, and probably executed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a path back to divinity through, at least the divine side of things. If they were then to repent to sin, stuff like that, and do something, try and prove faith to God, could they switch sides again and maybe become a Trenchcrusadelore?
Yeah, I really hope that we are now talking to several authors on the doing short stories and novels. I think a life of a wretched, from the how they got captured, is how they joined the legions, how they earned their freedom, and what they did next. I think that could make a very, very interesting story that really could explore those questions of morality. Because I think it's one of the questions that is I find irritating is wrong word, but to say maybe a bit binary. Is that the people talk about that are they good guys? I'll not go back to this before I address the point about the lawfulness. Now, if you look at our history, like in all the tons of demonology and the study of it, there are the aspect of the contracts that you can make with the pacts you can make with the devils, and making a deal with the devil, and the following the devil is in the details. Reading the Bible at the devil, it's all about this. Yes, we follow the letter of the law, but actually the end result is bad. So you're absolutely right that it's in the rules, like a wretch that the fulfills the criteria will be given freedom, but you have to do an incredibly morally questionable thing to get that. So it is a trap, if you see what I mean. So you have to do unspeakable. You have to become a traitor and a murderer in order to gain your freedom. So it's a real catch-22.
Yeah, because that would effectively then damn them anyway. It could damn them anyway, so then not have a path back, or they could do something sufficiently. But then again, there's the argument of free will. But if they're forced into the situation, is that necessarily their own free will being exercised because they're forced into it? So, kind of like like I said, it's something ambiguous.
It's an interesting one. It's because of course the whole sum of most theologies is that the most important is because it's very difficult to live a human life and do nothing questionable, that you have to sincerely atone for your misdeeds. So is that enough? That's an interesting question. And again, there are several answers depending on your culture, on your religion. Again, I think it's a question that I think is much better answered by all the players and the fiction writers collectively, rather than a game designer coming up with an arbitrary rule. From my viewpoint, is by default limited. I am just one person from one culture or one time period. And the game is supposed to be a display ground for the players around the world, rather than for me to try to impose a rigid one way of thinking.
Yeah. I do find the openness of the setting quite fascinating, because as you're aware, I've written some stories of my own in the birth, which I'm trying to look at the options and the choices that are presented to those characters in those stories. And yeah, the idea that a wretched might, like you say earlier on, might be able to completely atone for something and end up back on the side of good is an interesting idea. But also the idea that the wretched might do something so sufficiently evil that they eventually possibly ascend to a Hell Knight and then possibly then get sent into full demon mode. They were originally a slave, captured, and then all of a sudden now there's this chance of this dark apotheosis falling. But it's a fascinating thing.
Yeah, as above, so below. I think there's a lot of space for interesting stories, and the developments is it is a human-centric setting, as in the battle is about a version of our home and of our faith. It's that's why even an individual wretched, which is relatively insignificant in the scale of the Great War, can be intensely interesting to you. And I think that's what's so great about the skirmish game, because you're going to study the fate of just a single individual. That you see the stats, Richard, are very weak, but there is potential there in this story that they might become something greater in a bad or good way. Which brings us I wanted to talk shortly about the point that's being raised. What is are there good guys or bad guys? And I think this is the problem here is the absolutes, which is, again, you compare Beelzebub to a standard New Antioch yeoman. It's just a normal bloke. I believe in his home, he will still have all the human failings, right? We are not perfect. We simply are not. But comparing that to an absolute evil of entity that even to a demon is so hateful, it's almost incomprehensible. Beelzebub is objectively more evil, but here's the catch: Lord of the Rings, right? You have the Fellowship of the Ring. One of them falls. It's Boromir, isn't it? He tries to take the ring from Frodo by force, right? So let's think of Boromir, his beloved home country, and he's the effect the crown prince is about to fall to a demon that's bringing these monstrous armies. Like everything he's worked for, his love is going to be destroyed. His only hope of saving the people that he's sworn to protect is carried by his hobbit. It's the who doesn't know about the great world, isn't a war eater like you. He feels the burden of his responsibility for Gondor.
Yeah.
And in taking one object against the will from a single creature, you compare it to the sins of the Sauron. It's very small, isn't it? I mean, you can see why he was tempted, and he was supernaturally coerced by the ring. But this is the thing. We do not judge people who say they fight for the good with the same scale. I mean, Beelzebub is a fallen angel. That's forever is the sworn of anything good and has supernatural powers and has caused immense suffering. Is this immortal? And does horrific things, causes millions upon millions of death. And yet, it's for a single man, like think of Vigo Battis Yeoman, is abandoning their comrade to the enemy and not bringing where they're wounded and bringing aim to home, or the fleeing from the battle when their post is depending on you to holding your ground. It's still a failure. Okay, those are very minor ones. So, but the really interesting thing about to me, about the Trenchcrusadelore isn't who is more evil, because there are clearly differences. But it is that if you fight monsters, you have to take care, unless you become a monster yourself. So, when have you pushed it too far? Like both the Sultanate, definitely the Pilgrims, who do quite horrific things. Nothing that the real life religious sects don't already do. But they do horrific things, and they are sort of outside of the polite society. New Antioch and the church, with the communicant program, they push the envelope really far. how far is too far, considering who their enemies are? It's the where is the line that the Boromir crossed? That's an interesting one, isn't it? So I don't think it's the cause saying that this is absolute good, this is absolute evil. I don't think that's an interesting question. I think the interesting question is that the powers fighting the hell. It's the when have they pushed it too far, and the also how a heretic society would justify what they do. It's the like if you look at the story of Beelzebub, you can see with the betrayed by his worshippers why he got so upset. I mean, obviously he was wrong, but you see what led him to that situation. That to me much more interesting question than trying to measure grains of good and evil, which I think is not interesting and kind of futile.
No, and I think it also speaks to this sort of we were talking about earlier on about they are basically flip sides of the same coin. In that if one side gives aid in one way, the other side mirrors that with aid in a similar way. And, it is this, it's almost like you said, this sliding scale of how far can you go in that? Because, all right, hell gives, for example, gives Hell's forces submarines. So the faithful, sometime after, get the moving forces of Britannia. Massive technological. We're not really told much about how it comes about, but could there be divine influences? That possibly. Similarly, you get, the armor of the origins of Orichalcum steel. Not long after that, you get Infirm Lion armor. And it seems to me like if hell pushes the boundary enough, it's almost gone to be able to use the contract.
Yeah, I mean, since you've seen in the history store sort of that the both sides are sort of, when it comes to supernatural help, keeping the mortals on both sides on an even ground without triggering the apocalypse. Cause again, it's none of the signs of the end time starting are quite there. It's definitely what the hell believes is that the corrupting enough of the creation would give them the enough of the essence of the divine. It's in order to for their second rebellion to be successful, which of course none of the faithful believe, but that's the sort of the spurring motivation of of having the round two and being victorious this time, and seeing that the marring enough of the creation and taking over enough of the basically creatures that are the created in the image of God, is that they believe that will give them enough of spiritual power. It's to be successful in the second rebellion. But that can only happen if the mortals are allowed a free will to choose, and the both sides can persuade the humans to their side. It's with their arguments. It's so yeah. Of course, partly it is just very useful for us as a game creators to create a interesting knife edge conflict. Because obviously if you do a game about the end times, once you thought that it's done, that's it. No more stories to tell. So that's not very useful either. And also, we've always maintained a high level of ambiguity in the setting. If you look at, for example, the Synod, it's the channeling the voice of God. It always comes through machines. It doesn't come through a ray of light from the sky. It's there is always somebody special trained as a instrument of the divine. So that leaves enough room for there to doubt that how does this exactly really work? And I think that is important, because we want there to be in the setting a room for you to tell your own stories. There's the famous saying by Einstein: imagination is more important than knowledge. So us giving a what we would say, this is the canon factual knowledge about everything, how everything works. leaves very little room for imagination. I mean, even Mike and I, it's the don't always agree on how the story went, and that is okay, because it's only in very few places where we have to tell the exact story. Like, for example, when I give you a Praetor, I need to give you the exact stats here so you can play with it. I have to define its powers, how it moves, what weapons it can use, how those weapons and the armor works. That part has to be reliable as opposed to unreliable, so you can play the game. But beyond that, there is a plenty of space for people to interpret what they see and read.
Yeah, I think like we said a couple of times that open to interpretation is a big draw for a lot of people coming into the game. And I do want to sort of touch on a little bit of a wider interpretation of the setting as well. Like, is the interpretation of Trench Crusade being a 2 minutes to midnight setting sort of accurate? Because if, like we were saying earlier on, there's this mirroring of hell does one thing, so usually the divine will give it to the faithful, so there's this balance in the contract. If one side was to unbalance the contract, I say, for example, heaven, for whatever reason, sent an angel to the field, and it was so overwhelmingly powerful, it was pushing back hell's forces. As we've seen, it is devastating to hell and heaven's forces. And it was looking like the faithful were going to win, but the demons didn't send up a demon to challenge it. So there's no balance in that. Or the opposite way around, Beelzebub comes to the gate and no angel comes to challenge him. That effectively end the setting. Is God basically sat with a button on the delete existence button, waiting for the contract to be breached? Or is there, like you said, is there this ambiguity over whether or not that's even the case? And is there a different arbiter perhaps looking over this? And could creation end if the contract is unbalanced?
Okay, now here we come again, is the what we know versus what the people in the universe know. If you'd ask from a cleric in New Antioch, they'd absolutely say that the god could intervene at any point they wish, and simply because his ways are known to us, it's that everything will in the end go according to his great and powerful plan. And of course, the Islamic faith has a similar concepts as to most of the other religions, that ultimately there is a great power of good that is in the final stage is in control. But what kind is it? It's you're talking about this world-changing, like a supernatural event. But you remember how the Lord of the Rings, which is according to Tolkien, essentially in its essence Catholic work.
Yeah.
How did the story, and how was the Sauron destroyed? What happened? Because none of the free peoples could do it. They could not destroy the ring. What happened? Gollum slipped.
Yeah.
And that is when the Tolkien said that's the one time God interfered. Because in the end, Gollum abandoned his vow to Frodo and betrayed him, and he took the ring. And the only thing that then his own greed, because he was dancing on his victory, the universe decided that Gollum slips. An act of God. But how small is that act? And yet, the trees destroy, Barad collapses, all the armies of the Sauron are disintegrate. So there is like a sending the heavenly host versus this tiniest little nudge, like the smallest possible event that could ever happen. And that was, according to Tolkien, the act of God in the Lord of the Rings. So what is the amount that would shake the balance? What I can tell you, however, is that what we are not interested in is frozen conflict. So we obviously want to get this game out, and but we want to develop, because it's year 1914. The current game takes place when these small forces are skirmishing in the no man's land. We do want to cover what happens next. And like we said, we are not interested in frozen conflict. It's we want that there are this is the Great War will now move forwards. Things will happen, but what they are, I'm not going to go to that yet. But yes, you are right about the sort of how we view it on a very high level on the balance. But again, people are thinking about sending all the angels, while Tolkien thought that God resolved the whole War of the Ring with just a little breath, so just enough force that Gollum slipped.
Yeah, and it's where each power exerts the tiniest force for the greatest influence on the Great War overall. Clearly sending somebody like an angel or a demon through would be a massive thing that would have to be answered. But like you say, maybe a praetor about to take over New Antioch slips on something and dies. No, it just slips. It's this really minor thing that has cost a great effect in a war.
Yep. He's like the toasting for the victory, and somebody mixed up a barrel of holy water and the infernal wine, and he drinks his own doom by his own hand, because he's celebrating too soon.
Yeah.
It's the act of God. It's a good question, isn't it? It's
certainly an interesting one that opens up a lot of different storytelling, and I think that's everything that we were going to cover today. So I just want to close out by saying thank you for coming on again. It's been a pleasure as it was last time, and hopefully we'll have further conversations in the future about these sort of community questions. But yeah, finally, just to say thank you for watching, everybody, and I'll hand over to you if you want to say anything to the people watching today and about anything coming up.
Yeah. So what we really want to do is to empower your imagination and your creativity. And us in the dev team, we also have like the multiple ways of thinking, and the people come from different viewpoints. That is actually strength, not a weakness, because it allows there to be much richer experiences. So I wouldn't get too hung about it's the exact intricate detail rules on of the world's fiction, because in our own world also we are bombarded with information, and all of it is 100% accurate. So try to give your own imaginations room to breathe and create your own stories within the Trench Crusade universe, because that's definitely what we in the dev team are doing. I'm not being coy about it. It's we obviously will want to provide you a strong framework. It's a strong living, breathing world that you can immerse in. We are not trying to obfuscate anything, but at the same time, we also wanted to be there to be room in this world for you to breathe.
Right. And with that, then I think we'll finish off today. Thank you for coming on, and I will hopefully speak to you soon. Enjoy your day.